Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Vixen Voice. So, today is going to be fun and it's going to be deep. So, if you like to go deep and you like to have fun, stay tuned. Today, my guest is Stacey Abella. Stacey is an amazing woman who, by the way, just got back from India. So, if you, like me, have India at the top of your bucket list, stay tuned because we're going to hear about all things India. But Stacey was introduced to me by my friend and client Bex Wood, and we kind of hopped on a Zoom call, hit it off. You're going to see a lot of what we believe in our life journey is very aligned. So I'm very excited to have Stacey on today. She is the CEO and founder of Wind in Your Sales Consulting. She has been a passionate traveler and journaler, get this, since age 7. So we're going to hear about that too, right? And she is also the author of Secrets from My Travel Diaries, How One Burnt Out Executive Reignited the Adventurer Within. And Stacey's going to share with us that she has her audiobook coming up as well. So Stacey, super excited to have you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, April. I am equally excited. I have been listening to your podcast and just loving all your guests, and it is just such an honor to be one of them today.
Oh, well, I'm so happy to have you. Yeah, I joke around that I can't believe this is my job, right? I get to have amazing conversations with amazing women all the time. I'll take it.
Absolutely agreed.
Cool. Well, as I shared with y'all, I'm very excited to talk to Stacey. Not just what she does in work, but you're going to see she's such a genuine, amazing, warm person, and she just kind of shows up as she is and the beautiful light she is. And then we're also going to hear about her adventure. So we're going to kind of dig in, and maybe Stacey, I'd love to start with, can you share a story about a pivotal moment in your life that made you like this amazing, awesome woman we see today?
Absolutely. So, a pivotal experience that I had in 2019, and this was after several years of just exploring, realizing that I wasn't where I wanted to be in my mid-career, and exploring, reading, trying to figure out, okay, how do I get some clarity as to what I really want? Because I had lost my vision for my life in all of the busyness. At that point, I was married, had kids, and it just, life had become more about doing than being. And so there was a point in time when I had begun to read Robin Sharma. So he is a very transformational author and speaker. And at that point, I signed up for a workshop, a weekend workshop in Toronto, to spend that weekend really getting some tools to be able to uh, put some structure around that self-discovery that I had had. And it was a very difficult decision for me to invest in myself because it was not characteristic of me to do that. I was just not in that headspace at all. But I took the leap to do it because I knew it was something I needed to do. And I went to the workshop and actually implemented afterwards the things that I had learned. That's the thing about workshops. Sometimes you get all excited about them and then you don't end up actually taking the actions.
Yes.
And so I did start to implement some of the things, including, most importantly, so getting up earlier and in the morning and really taking some time for myself, because one of these stories, one of the narratives that I was telling myself was, I don't have time. I don't have time to do things for myself. I don't have time to write, which was one of my great passions in life since the age of 7. And I had stopped writing for a good 10 years. And so once I joined the 5 a.m. club, so to speak, at that point, then I was actually slating the time to do that first during my day. So it actually got done, and it got done in the silence of the morning. And so then I started all this passion unfolding from taking this time for myself during the day, during that, for the first hours of the day. And when that happened, I became essentially a new person because suddenly, even the things that I didn't enjoy,
Hmm.
I actually could do with more joy because I was feeling just this euphoria about being able to spend time on my passion. And actually, I when I went to India just this past couple weeks ago, I went with a group of people from that mastermind that I attended in 2019. And so I've
Oh, so
continued on to
cool.
put myself in that environment.
I love it. Okay, I have so many questions about what you just shared, as I'm sure our listeners do. So, first of all, one thing I heard you say is you found yourself mid-career, not where you wanted to be, and kind of taking care of everyone else, husband, kids, etc., and not really having time for you. And I think a lot of women listening can totally relate to that, right? So I definitely want to dig in. I love that you put a structure around that. But first, can you give us some context? So I heard you were mid career, and I heard you realized you kind of weren't where you wanted to be. So just give us a little context, like what were you doing? What was your job? If you feel comfortable, like about what age did all of this go down,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
Cool.
So, a little context really comes from my book, Secrets from My Travel Diaries.
Love it.
So, what I discovered was so this book starts out when I was 21 and I was going overseas and I was living my dreams. And what was amazing about it that I realized later was that I knew exactly what I wanted and I had this vision of how I would get there and I went out and did it. And over time, over the years, what happened was I started to execute on these different dreams that I had, right? I wanted to be a
Mm-hmm.
corporate executive. I wanted to travel overseas. I wanted to also be able to do that with a husband and kids. And I wanted to have it all, right? That's what we hear. We can have it all. And so here I was on the surface with it all. I had it all
Mm-hmm.
because I had achieved all those dreams that I had thought that I wanted. The only thing was there was still an emptiness. And this, I think, happens to a lot of us around our mid career, like our 40s. We
Mm-hmm.
start to realize, gosh, we've arrived, but we haven't really arrived because somehow the satisfaction and the joy has started to go away. And so that's really where I found myself when I began to search and began to say, okay, where is that new vision for where I want to be in life? Because somehow I have lost it in the sea of life.
Yeah, I love that. And one thing I heard is you said when I was 21, I just kind of went off and did what I wanted. And it's so funny because I talk about all the time when I think about my 18-year-old self, she was so much more courageous than my 40-year-old self, right?
Right.
Like, yeah, I was clear, I was confident, I loved myself, all the things that like later in life I was like, "Hold on, where'd that go? Let me get all that stuff back." And so the process you're going through, I like to say we're really rediscovering ourselves and we've evolved, but like our core doesn't change. I really believe we have core values that fill us up. And, I relate to your story because adventure is one of my three core values. And that became highlighted to me in 2020 when we were in lockdown and I was
Mm,
like climbing the walls, right? And and so, I love your story because I do agree. I read something on life cycles and it says from like 37 to 42 is the period where women start feeling that emptiness and we're like, okay, I checked all the boxes. Like I have what I said I wanted, but is there something else? And I think that's when the journey within starts happening, be it a spiritual journey, what do you want, etc. And I love that your journey within ended up with you in India. So we'll get there. So I love this. I'd love to go back to Robin Sharma when you talked about the 5 a.m. club and going to that mastermind. Can you share with our audience what you did to start implementing afterward? Like, how did you decide what to implement? And then we'll talk about actually waking up because, I've been going to masterminds since 2012. I now run them. And I think if you don't have that short to-do list when you walk away. It's very overwhelming and you have this great experience and you do nothing, right? So what did you find worked for you after you had this amazing experience? How did you like narrow down what to do next?
So one of the things that was so powerful was we wrote a vision for our life,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of put a time bound. Okay, in a year from today, a year from now, what is it that how would your life be like if you had no boundaries, right? If you had no restrictions on it. And so we spent some time really writing that out. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was to start to write again. There were some other things that I wrote down that it was 2020 and who knew it would be where we are, right? So not 100%
Right.
of it could even happen, right? But the writing part could absolutely happen. And so that was one of the things that came forward. And so what I also had was an accountability partner that I
Mm-hmm.
just connected with during the workshop, and she and I started having some calls, and then that was really what helped me to keep resetting back to, okay, what is that vision, and are you really on track to actually achieve that? Because it's so easy to then get caught up in all the distractions when you
Mm-hmm.
return. And so that those two elements were really helpful. I would say the other thing that was very, very impactful was having a structure around the 5 a.m. club. And so what it entails, it's about exercising, meditating, learning, reflecting, and having really some time slated to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that helped me to do, if you can do a little bit of exercise in the beginning and kind of get yourself awake, then it can help then with the time to reflect and learn later on. Because what I found was it was difficult for me to get up early at first because I would just be just too tired to be very productive. And so that was just a great structure that really afforded me that opportunity to actually make the most of that time and then even expand on it.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny. I have a little rebounder mini trampoline, and sometimes I'm like on it with my cup of coffee, just like taking steps or doing knee races because, yeah,
I
you
love
need
it.
that thing to like launch you out, right?
Just watch
Because,
you
no, I
don't
mean,
spill. Yeah.
yeah. So it's not often with my coffee. I usually get there, but the other day I was on it, like in my room with my coffee. Like it was a difficult morning. I'd been traveling a lot, and I was like, because yeah, I mean, my nature, the reason I like coffee right away is I want something cozy. So like I want to just get cozy and like curl up in a chair and do my meditation and prayer and like be creative and but then you get stuck in that cocoon and you don't move to the next thing. So I love this idea of, I think I'm going to expand my movement time before. So I love that. Thank you. Let's talk about waking up early. So here's what's interesting. I coach about time management a lot, time, energy, and confidence management. And that's really what you did, right? Like you shifted
Hmm.
your time management, you're shifting you're doing the energy with exercise, and then that's giving you the confidence to go throughout your day because you like poured into yourself. So I love that. But I like to say pay attention to your biorhythms, what works for you.
Hmm.
So I'd love to hear the real story behind the 5 a.m. club because I personally get up at like 4:46. That gives me enough time to like have my coffee, like do that little routine, and then by 5, like I'm in meditation. Like that's my goal. But I remember training myself to wake up, and originally it was not to have this time for myself. When I was a financial advisor, I saw that all my mentors and everyone successful got up very early. So I was trying to mimic success when I trained myself. And I didn't get up as early as I do now. Now I do it because, like you, that's my quiet time that I get to go deep and do the things that make me feel at peace and ready for the day. And I just find my day flows so much better. I have the emotional, mental, psychological, and physical capacity to deal with what's coming. But some people struggle with that. I had one client, she was waking up at 7:30. I said, guess what? can you do me a favor? Just wake up at 7. Because she would work very late, right? And I was like, just wake up at 7. And she was like, oh, yeah, I could do that. And so if you think about it, she just bought 2.5 hours a week, which is 10 hours a month, which is more than a full work day, right? Just doing that little tweak. So, I'm just sharing that because I'm sure someone's listening like, yeah, I'd love to do that, but I don't want to wake up at 5 a.m., right? So I'm curious if you just ripped the band aid off and went for 5 a.m. or if you went incrementally like that.
So for me, I am a morning person. So it's
Okay.
easier for
I
me.
am not.
Yeah. I mean, because I would typically work out in the morning before work
Mm-hmm.
anyway. But what was happening was I would work out with the monkey mind of just all of the
Yep.
the worry and distraction and anxiety thinking about my day already. And so a big change was putting structure around actually finding time to reflect and read and have some more targeted exercise that
Mm-hmm.
where I was first kind of resetting and having gratitude first and really calming my mind before doing it. So that was a big game changer for me. But I would say for others who are very good at night or in the afternoon, I mean, we need to honor that time.
Yeah.
The important thing is to actually do it. And that was always the problem that I had is if I didn't do it in the morning, then I wasn't going to do it. And so I guess I would say it's about the
Same.
outcome, right? So if you can actually consistently slate the time in the afternoon or the night, fine, great. But it just, for me, the morning was best. And even if I tell people, if even if you are not a morning person, even if you have some incremental time, like you said, 30 minutes more, or even start with 5 minutes more,
Mm-hmm.
then it really can help because it just the difference in your day to start with even some gratitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some prayer, some kind of a reset of just how fortunate we are. We opened our eyes in the morning, right? We're able bodied. There's so much to be thankful for. And that just creates so much of a different environment for the entire day, even if it's only 5 minutes.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I like to bookend the day. I like to start with gratitude and excitement and end with like celebrating my wins for the day. So you wake up in a good place and you go to sleep in a good
Beautiful.
place. It's really
Beautiful.
good. So, what I heard you say was by putting the structure in place and starting your writing again in the morning. Now, just to be clear, at this time you still had your corporate career, you still had everything going the same. You just added this like one additional thing of putting that structure in the
That's
morning
right.
and starting to write, right? And here's what's powerful. I heard you say I became a new person. And you and I have
Hmm.
talked before and you shared with me that people saw it in you. So share with us like some feedback and comments that you got with others. Like how did you start to realize besides your internal feelings that you had really revived yourself?
So often I would see people that I hadn't seen in a while, and they would sometimes barely recognize me or ask me, what did you do? What happened to you? Like, is that something I can buy in a bottle? What is that you did? Because you are such a different person. You seem like a different person.
Yeah.
And so that was a very powerful change. And it became, I think, contagious to others that they wanted to then be able to see how they could change as well. They saw possibility
Mm-hmm.
from that. And so that's really, I would say, how I knew more than anything. Also, the fact that I just felt different. I think
Yeah.
as it happens gradually, we don't notice as much. But but so it really helped when people pointed it out. But definitely over time, I know that I felt differently. I mean, I feel much younger now than
Oh,
I did 10 years ago. Much younger.
yeah, that's crazy. Everybody wants that. So if you miss that, rewind this episode and listen again how Stacey got there. And you are
Right.
welcome. So I love having this conversation because, when my clients come on board, we are, one of my programs is really geared toward women who still are in corporate, have a side gig, and helping them make their side
Hmm.
gig, their business. And so when I have that, or a more analytically minded client, like I just had a CPA come on board starting a business, they're like, when we start coaching, they're like, this feels like therapy. And I'm like, no, to be clear, I'm not a therapist. There is psychology behind some of the programs I'm certified to teach. But, they're like, wow, I wasn't prepared for this. And what I'm asking them to do is work on themselves, like what you did
Hmm.
in the morning, right? Because really, when you're a business owner, if you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, have a team, etc., you are your business's most important asset, and you have to understand that, right? So the better that Stacey is and feels and shows up, the better the business will be and the easier to run the business. So I love that you're chatting about this and how you really felt like a new person. So I imagine, how did that lead to what you do now? Can you help us bridge that gap? Or when did the decision get made to, kind of make a total change?
Yeah, so it happened over time,
Yeah.
which I think is the best way. And it is it. What I find is when we're willing to do the inner work, it
Mm-hmm.
seems scary at first. It seems
Yeah.
scary to face some of the things that have just been, in the background for a long time. But then once you do that work, you start to realize it was far more scary to be trying to push things away, right? A lot more energy
Yeah.
drain to try to push it away than just to acknowledge it, to face it and be like,
Mm-hmm.
this is not actually as bad as it seemed, right? And so I find that inner work, it's like we reflect like mirrors.
Yeah.
And what is inside reflects out, and people can tell. And so that's what I started to realize, is that I was having totally a different experience, a totally different, creating a different reality,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, because I was different, because I was reflecting out something, a different energy. And so that's, I totally agree with you there. But in terms of how things evolved in terms of my starting my business, so I got a lot of questions about, I'll have what she's having, like, how did you do that? And so that's when I went on the quest to really figure that out, because I knew there were changes, but I couldn't put my finger with clarity on why
Mm-hmm.
and how I got there. And so it was an intentional process to go back and try and reverse engineer that. And that's really when I began to put into practice with others the same
Yeah.
things that I had been able to do. And so that started my coaching business several years ago, and as well as my leadership training. And then that also led to my writing my book as well, because my book was really an inner journey that I took to go back to who I was at 21. Because a lot of, when it's called, the book's called Secrets from My Travel Diaries, because it is truly actually looking back through those travel diaries that I wrote at that time, and understanding who I was and who I can still become, who I am now and who I can become. And so that was also an inner and outer journey that I took through that book. And so
Yeah.
all this led to just this reinvention of myself that became just an exciting thing, not only for me starting this business, but also for others to see that it was possible.
Yeah, I love how you talk about showing up for others, because a lot of times I run into, as women, we feel that self care or self love or self discovery is selfish, right? And it's not, because when you show up differently, you impact others. So I'm imagining, after this change and after you started rediscovering yourself, like, how do you feel you showed up as a wife and a mother, a colleague, a friend? I mean, I would imagine that was totally different, right?
Absolutely. So when I was in India, we got this wonderful analogy
Hmm.
and it was about the solar panel. And so a solar panel, what does it need? What does it have to do? It has to first absorb the sun before then in the darkness it can then share it. And so if we're not willing to receive, if we're not able to intake that light within ourselves, let it shine, then we don't have anything to give someone else, or not nearly as much, right? If we show up depleted, it's a completely different energy and environment that we create. And so the idea of doing that for some kind of self-sacrifice, it really doesn't result in what we want it to. We have to charge our own batteries so that we
Yeah.
can have those batteries to help others.
Yeah. As my great grandmother always said, you can't give from an empty cup, right?
Hmm.
So
Exactly.
you
Brilliant.
have yeah, I know. We really should think back and listen to things we are told. There's
Agreed.
a lot of wisdom.
There is.
But, we're hard headed. We have to rediscover for ourselves. So I love
It's
this.
true.
So yeah, and Stacey, you were sharing with me before we hopped on. We were chatting a bit that you're really into. Tell us about your new possibility project and what you recommend for women who might find themselves in a similar situation to you. Right, their mid-level career or even upper-level career, and it's kind of scary to walk away from that income coming in. Which is funny because as a retirement planner for 15 years, I dealt with that all the time. Right, like it's very scary when you've had that security of income coming in and suddenly you have to become your own source of income. So I know that you have some like recommendations and tips for women who might think, yeah, I really want to do that, but quite honestly, I'm scared. I'm scared of turning off the income tap.
That's right. Well, one of the things that I highly recommend that I wish I would have done much sooner in life is to work on having multiple streams of income. And so that's why my husband now and I now are working on commercial real estate as well, because this is a way that you can also gain passive income that can flow in and not have to rely solely on a paycheck. I know that that was something that was eye-opening for me. And when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and the Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, it changed my life because I realized that there was so much opportunity there that I wasn't tapping into. And the scariest thing is it's walking away from that paycheck and the mindset you need. One of the ahas that I realized was I had become disconnected between, you're doing all these things in corporate and then the money flows kind of like to the side, right? But when you're an entrepreneur, that what you're doing has to also, that outcome has to tie to revenue in a much different way than it needs to if you're in corporate and getting a salary. And so that mindset shift alone is a huge shift for clients that will be trying to start their own business. And so you have to be able to give yourself time to take
Yeah.
that journey within to be able to grow into who you need to grow into to have a successful business. And wow, if you can have some passive income coming in and during that time, it really does create some security and some diversification for you so that you have a lot more options to do that.
Yeah, and having that foundation set aside, like that foundational money that you don't touch, that's your safety net. I agree. And what Stacey's touching on with cash flow, this is one of the number one stressors I hear from almost every female client I have. And by the way, friends of mine too. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who co-runs with her husband a business that's almost doing $1 billion. And she said, April, when he invited me in, I was miserable the first 6 months. I almost walked away and said, thank you, but no thank you to the business, not her husband, right? But
Mm-hmm.
because she had been successful in her other career and it was so easy. And she said, the cash flow situation stressed me out. So, I hear this from startup solopreneurs all the way up the chain. So this is definitely if you're thinking about embarking on this journey, you really want to have a plan in place to give you that peace of mind when it comes to cash flow, and understand that there is going to be stress, and it is different than managing cash flow of a household from a job, etc. So I love that you touched on that. Thank you, Stacey. So I'm going to pivot selfishly because I want to hear about India. So let's chat about India. So I heard, are you still in a mastermind group through that group you went to, or have you just stayed in touch with people and you all planned this trip together?
So we have stayed together, a subset. There were several hundred people attending,
Mm-hmm.
but a subset of us, that's about 15 to 20 of us, are still actively getting together once a week
Yep.
and meeting and really building our leadership skills, our effectiveness, our journey within, and putting structure around that. And so we had the opportunity through one of our facilitators of our group to go to India. It was an incredible opportunity that I thought about not going for a few seconds, and then I realized there was just no way you could say no. So I got to rearrange my life to be gone, for a couple of weeks, which is not easy to do when you have a lot of responsibilities. But it was a incredible tailored trip to the things that we had been learning over the past several years,
Wow.
and being able to meet some just incredibly wise sages, monks, and leaders from in India, within India, and then also that opportunity to be able to experience the place. I mean, we were going into these wonderful restaurants, staying in these incredible hotels and things, seeing temples and sites that just blew me away. And it was a chance to do that with a group of people. There were 16 of us who went, had all been together for a long time, some of which I'd never actually met in person, because you don't meet
Wow.
everyone at the workshop, right? You don't, I mean, that was
Yeah.
big. And so some people that I'd only ever seen on Zoom for all that time. And so to be able to have that kind of reunion together and to be in that environment of people that all just, you just want to grow, it's
Yeah.
very, very inspiring, to be able to further your journey and set new intentions.
I love it. So it's so funny you mentioned knowing people in Zoom. This past weekend, I was at Dean Graziosi's The Edge Mastermind, and I had not randomly, our two other in persons, like something came up, like emergencies that I couldn't go. So I was like, I am going this time. So, you've seen people on Zoom, and then to meet them in person is just so cool. Like, it's so funny when you're like, oh, we've been friends, but this is awesome. I actually know you now. So I love that. It's a great experience, and it's just such a great environment to be in. So, I have a couple of questions for you about the trip to India. Number one, what was your biggest aha during the trip? So, either a self growth, a realization, something, whatever comes to mind.
So I think it was about the pure peace and joy that I felt about just being in the flow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not trying to control things, but just realizing that things will be the way they they need to be. Um, for
Yes.
example, I had an incredible opportunity to meet Jay Shetty
Mm-hmm.
while I was in India. And I had talked to one of our facilitators of our group, who knows him. And I had said, hey, could you pass along my book to Jay? Because I would love to give him a copy of my book. And so I'd taken some time to write in the front of the book a note for him and everything.
Aw.
But then, as things happened, there was he wasn't able to connect with Jay and things until then that evening, when Jay just walked up to us at dinner And so then I was suddenly able to then give Jay my book and really talk to him about his book, Think Like a Monk, and just the inspiration that he has given for me. And so I think just being able to be in the flow and let things happen
Mhm.
as they happen, it can be so much better. And what was amazing too is in my mind that whole day was just this picture inside my head of me standing with my book with Jay. And I was like, huh, how is this happening? And then all of a sudden, there it was happening. You know, it's like the power of visualization, I guess.
Oh my gosh. I love that because, what you're calling be in the flow is what I call surrendering. And surrender can be such a triggering word to so many people, especially women, because they're trying to hold everything together and control and they have too many balls in the air, etc. But I love the way you described it, the pure peace and joy, because this year, in fact, I'm about to record a solo episode about what I've learned this year. And what I've been really focused on is surrendering, like exactly what you're
Mm,
talking about. Because I realized I was really good at it when things are going bad. Like I'm really good at accepting worst case scenario and going for it. And I realized I was not surrendering in my everyday life and when things were good. So I wanted to
hmm.
surrender those moments as well. And it's amazing and magical what happens. So I want to hear more about India. But yeah, find my solo episode on what I've learned so far this year. But Stacey, thank you for that because explaining it, I mean, I got goosebumps when you said pure peace and joy being in the flow because I know exactly what you mean. And I love, and maybe I need to think about using a different word than surrender, although I think it's good sometimes to be triggered. So if you're going to be reflective and say, why is this triggering me, right? If it's an environment where people are willing to do that self discovery. So I love that. Awesome. And I love how you talked about you just had that picture in your mind because when I coach on goal setting, I'm always like, I want you to own the goal and release the how, right? Like own the
Right.
result, release the how, because it's kind of like when you buy a new car, right? I know you're talking about manifesting and deeper spiritual, but simple, what is it, your reticular something in your brain where you buy a
Hmm.
new car and you see it everywhere on the road. And it's
Right.
because especially today, we have so much coming at us that our brain is going to get overwhelmed if it doesn't focus us on what's important. So when you state that goal or state that outcome, what happens is your heart and your brain get coherent and they start trying to find the answer, right? So a lot of times when you set a goal, you're not going to have the answer of how to get there. Like it's worth going into the exercise and then surrendering and say, okay, it's going to come to me how I get here. And that's exactly what happened for you. It just showed up and you were ready to take advantage of this opportunity, right?
It was so unexpected, but that's why I really have a strong platform around clarity. Because what I
Yes.
realized, most people don't have clarity. I did not have clarity
Mm-hmm.
before I really started to be intentional about it because I think some of it is, oh, we get hesitant to write things down
Yeah.
or because we're afraid maybe it won't happen, or we figure, well, oh, I've done that before, I don't need to do it again. But it's like, yes, you might have had a vision for your life at some point, but you
Yeah.
have to refresh that vision and make sure it's clear, because otherwise you do start to drift so quickly. And that is one of my
Mm-hmm.
core values, is to live according to what's most important. But the
Yes.
challenge is you've got to know what that is.
That's so funny. It's one of mine too. I call it alignment. So mine are
Mm-hmm.
alignment, affection, and adventure. And so I think we have very similar core
Yes.
values. I like it.
Yes.
But I love for the audience to hear women listening how you say it and how I say it, because sometimes we get tripped up and like how things are said when it's really the intention or the spirit behind, and we're all different in how we experience things, right? Like there are universal truths, but we experience them differently. So it's really great not to hold yourself to the comparison model where you're comparing yourself to everyone else. Awesome. Okay, so thank you for bringing up clarity. I remember chatting with you about that, and in fact, my first session in my small group coaching is around clarity as well.
Mhm.
Because if you don't have clarity, how do you know if we have success in the 90 days, right? If you don't know what the intended outcome is, how can we measure if it's successful or not? So clarity is so important. And I think clarity comes a lot of times people want confidence before they get clarity, but I feel the clarity gives you confidence.
Agreed. Agreed. Because it's kind of like, we've got to know where we're heading. And if we don't, it's like our brains can't process that. We have to be really clear. It's kind of like back in the hunter-gatherer days. You have to know where your target is.
Yep.
And if we don't, then we're just rolling with the waves, as we say in Wind in Your Sails Consulting, right? And so we need to have that. We need to have some kind of an anchor. We need to have a vision, like a compass, to lead us, along the way. We need to have the lighthouses so that we know where we're looking for in the interim, so we know we're going in the right direction. We need to be actually at the helm intentionally of our lives. And those were the big learnings that I had, that I was not, because over time that
Yeah.
had unraveled, and the captain of my ship was everything else but me.
Yeah. Well, and in today's world, I think we've become so addicted to our negative thoughts and our negative emotions. And I love that you're saying being at the helm of the ship. If you're not at the helm of the ship, you're going to be taken down by those waves. I mean,
Hmm.
that's just the truth. That's just the world we live in today. It almost happened to me this week. I'm usually pretty strong emotionally, but my mom's in the hospital. A lot of balls are up in the air with business. And I got to the park yesterday at the end of a day to go for my walk. And I got a text from my dad, like some not great news about, from my mom's doctors. And I could feel like that feeling coming in where you almost feel like, oh my gosh, is there one more thing? And I was like, nope, not going to let this happen. I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to go for my walk. I'm going to have my quiet time, my meditative time. And then I'm going to let my mind go here and my heart go here after I take care of myself. And when I came back, I felt in a better position, and I was able to call my mom and call and make sure she was okay, right? And how she
Good.
took the news. But I think it's so easy to let yourself sink into like that wave that wants to overcome you of victimhood, self-pity, but if you stay in control, you don't get taken over by it. So that's important, and surrendering. Or being
Hmm.
in the flow, as you say. Awesome. So I want to go back to India. I know your time is valuable, so I don't want to keep you too long. I'm curious. I know favorite can be defined a lot of ways, so I'm going to break it down. What was the favorite thing you saw in India? What was something you saw that was just amazing?
So I would say it was, when we were in Jaipur, one of the things that we saw was the kite festival. The one day of the year that they have the kite festival was one of the days that we were there. It was actually the day that we arrived. And how incredible was that, to see all those kites flying in the air? And coupled with that, it's like, the newness of that first time you arrive somewhere. And Jaipur
Yeah.
is the pink city of India. That's what it's known as. And I think driving from the airport through the city gates and everything, all the pink buildings, and the bazaar that they have with all the shopping, and everything going on there, and just there's so much to feast your eyes upon as you're arriving. And then on top of that, also the kite festival being in full swing. It was just a moment that you just feel just almost overstimulated
Yeah.
by the amount of excitement and adventure that you feel on that arrival.
Oh, I love it. That's a good way to fight jet lag, huh?
Well, yes, it is. You're right.
You're not thinking about sleeping. I'm laughing because when I travel, that first day is so painful for me always. I'm like, hang on. I always like I like to make sure plenty is planned for day one, so I keep awake. But that's amazing. So let's chat about this because you talked about you're almost overwhelmed by it. How do you think if you lived in that environment all the time, do you think you would adjust to it, or what are your thoughts or feelings about that?
I think because I have the tools, right? Like what you just described with your situation and thinking, oh, I'm getting overwhelmed. And then you were able to pull back and
Mm-hmm.
spend that time with yourself. I think because of that, I will be okay in anything that I do,
Yeah.
in any environment, because I'm able to create my own environment.
Yeah, you have to create your pocket of peace, whatever that looks like your
I love
protective
that.
barrier. Yeah, love it. Okay, so what's your favorite thing you ate in India?
Oh gosh.
I
I
know I
loved
love
the
Indian
food.
food.
I loved it. I loved the curries, and I mean
Yeah.
we would go these places. We got so spoiled. I mean, we would go places and food would just show up and it was just
Hmm.
delicious, because we had a big group and everything and it was all planned. I mean, the boots on the ground that they had. I mean, the timing was just incredible. And so the food was, I can't even say a favorite. It was all so good. I could have just stayed there and eaten that food for the rest of my life and never missed any other kind of food at all. I mean, it was incredible.
I love it. So what was your favorite activity that y'all did?
So we had some incredible breakout sessions
Hmm.
where we were able to hear from just so many just people that were just so wise, who had really studied this. And one of the things I really loved that we did was both in the beginning and the end, it was set with such intention. So in the beginning, we had a session that kicked off that really talked about how you have to make sure that you are being intentional about finding the spiritual in India. Otherwise, you can get caught up in all that's going on, right? And so we had a session on that. And what does adventure mean to you? And adventure can wear off, right? So how can
Hmm.
you keep that intention? And so it was just an incredible way to kick off. And then at the end, it was about, okay, what are you going to do after this? How are you going to integrate these learnings into your life? Because if you don't start doing that before you leave, and some of the emotion, the excitement wears off, right? And then it's like, it becomes disconnected. If you don't start doing it when you're at the end of your trip or even all the way during, then you're not going to have the same sustainability of that motivation. And so I love how we tied everything off from beginning to end.
I love that. So, what's your next entry in your travel diaries? Where are you going next?
So on a cruise for spring break, and so that'll be really fun, and just be some time to spend with my family, to be
Hmm.
able to enjoy them. And what's nice about a cruise is you don't have to think about any plans. The
Yeah.
breakfast and dinner and everything is all there, and the itinerary is all there. So it's just going to be some really wonderful time to just be able to be together, and so that's something that's very important to me.
I love that. It sounds like you're good at balancing. So, where are y'all headed on the cruise? Are you in the Caribbean or where?
Yes. Yeah, it's a
Nice.
Caribbean cruise.
I love it.
So, which, yeah, it'll be fun.
No, it's funny because I never wanted to go on a cruise. It just didn't seem appealing to me because I am adventurous and I was like, oh, I'm going to be stuck on a boat all these days, right? And long story short, in my financial career, I won, like for being a top performer, I got an Alaskan cruise and it happened that my dad wanted to. So my parents were there, I brought a friend. And Oh my gosh, it's one of my favorite trips ever. Like, I was very ignorant about the pros of a cruise because, like you said, the days at sea, it's like throw on yoga clothes, go have breakfast with your friends, right? Go to the spa, sit by the pool. And, I think if you're a very driven person, sometimes it's hard to take time off like that, but you really like there's nothing else to do, so you're going to do it. And another benefit to a cruise I love is you don't have to pack and repack, but you get to go to
Mm,
different places.
true. That's true. Another thing I love is that you get to sample places, because you're
Yeah.
never there for that long. And so there have definitely been places that we've gone on cruises that we've decided we wanted to go back to for a
Yeah.
longer period of time. And so it's a good way to just see what's out there.
I love it. I love it. Well, that sounds like super fun. I'm glad you're getting to go do that and enjoy yourself. So tell us, Stacey, what's next for you in your journey? What's your next big project, or what are you promoting or really focused on in your business right now, in your consulting business?
Yeah, so my audiobook is coming out, and that was just such an experience to record. That is totally different to record your audiobook than it is to write the book. And I really found just some fresh emotion and connection with the book as I did that. And
Oh,
so
cool.
I'm really excited to share that. And then, of course, my husband and I are working on that commercial real estate project, and so that is something that's going to give my clients that I have, my coaching clients, a tangible way to be able to
Mm.
really create financial freedom, get on that path as well. So that's something to couple with the consulting that I'm already doing and coaching, and so I'm very, very excited about that.
I love it. So Stacy mentioned her audiobook. What I'd love to say is if you're enjoying this episode and you really love the Vixen voice, number one, don't keep us a secret because our purpose is to help women think outside of the box, inspire them to their best life, and let you know that you're not alone. Many of us go through the same things. So if you have a friend you think would benefit from these episodes, please share. And we would love to hear from you. If you drop us a heartfelt review on your favorite podcast channel, just take a screenshot and send it to my team at Vixen Gathering and drop in the email, I want Stacy's book. And here's what we're going to do. Our team's going to buy you a copy of Stacy's book, and Stacy's going to autograph it for you, and we will shoot it to you. So we'd love to share that with you. We'd love to hear from you, and please don't keep us a secret. So, Stacy, speaking of which, I'm sure our audience loves you just like I do. So where can they find you? And by the way, everyone, this will be in the show notes, so check it out at vixengathering.com. But Stacy, where can our audience and our listeners find you?
So you can go to staceyabella.com, STACEYABELLA.com. And I'm also social media as well on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
Yeah, definitely follow her on social. She's been sharing little tidbits from her trip in India. It's really great. And she is a writer, so it's good content. So check that out. Follow Stacy. And Stacy, before we go, I'd love to ask you a couple of quick questions I like to ask all my guests. So I know you're a listener, so you might know what's coming. So number one, I'd love to ask you, when do you feel you're most feminine? As you said, we women have a lot of balls in the air, right? But when do you feel most feminine?
I feel it when I'm being creative. And so that's something that I think that the fact that I've been doing the 5 a.m. club, it's now 5 years.
Wow,
Over
congrats.
time, right, things add up. And so I think starting out that way and embracing my femininity and my creativity in the morning has given me such an incredible grace and peace throughout the rest of the day.
Love it. So if you had to put a color to your femininity, what color would it be?
Oh, pink.
Which color pink? Oh, show me your nails again. Light
Yeah,
pink.
so my nail artist really nailed it. She's like, I found this and I knew it was for you.
I
That's
love
when you
it.
know somebody knows you.
I know. I love when I go get my hair and nails done and they're like, "What do you want?" I'm like, Oh, you're the expert. Show me what I want. Like, I love to just give that choice up. And it's so fun what you get in return. I love that you do that. Yeah, mine's magenta pink. That's why I asked. Like, kind of the purpley pink, but more pink.
I love that color.
Yeah, it's very vibrant. Awesome. And then I always like to share, I feel the world needs a little more love, so I like to challenge women who are listening, how can you show up in love today for yourself and others? So Stacey, if you had a message for everyone out there listening, what would your message be?
And I think it's about showing up to serve. So, just a quick story, something that I experienced in India that I will, I think, never forget. So, we were attending a lecture outside of one of the temples, and there were these ladies, this group of ladies that were outside the temple, and they were dressed in full saris, and it was just these beautiful beaded saris, as if they were going to some, fancy ball or something, right? And they were out there sweeping outside the temple.
Oh.
And they were sweeping as if doing just this beautiful dance. It was a dance of joy, and they were singing together. And I thought, how incredible, what a testament to the joy of service, that pure, sincere joy of service. Because, normally if we're, cleaning our house or something, we'd be, dressed in just whatever t-shirt and whatever, and you could see them dressed up just to work, to serve with such joy. And I find that so inspiring.
I love it. Love it so much. Well, Stacey, as always, it's such a pleasure chatting with you. Hopefully, next time I'm in Houston, we can catch up. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your heart with our audience today. I hope that you have a wonderful day. And for everyone listening, we'll talk to you soon.